Alexander Hayes stood before the expansive glass window of his top-floor office in the Lumos Tech skyscraper, gazing out at the glittering lights of Oslo below. The golden glow of the city, scattered across the frigid winter night, resembled countless tiny stars. Yet amidst this grandeur, Alexander felt an emptiness that all the success in the world could not fill. At 42, Alexander Hayes was the epitome of achievement, the CEO of Lumos Tech, one of the world's leading technology firms. Admired for his decisive leadership, bold strategies, and industry-revolutionizing projects, he was a towering figure in his field. But over the past 2 decades, while others celebrated his relentless ascent, Alexander had experienced only the cold, unrelenting solitude of an endless winter. When he was just 22, tragedy struck. His parents lost their lives in a car accident, leaving him to take the reins of the family business. What had once been a young man's fervent passion for technology turned into a grueling journey of survival in the ruthless world of corporate leadership. Friends drifted away, personal relationships eroded under the weight of his self-imposed isolation, and Alexander learned a harsh truth. To protect himself from pain, he needed to maintain a distance from everyone. Years of loneliness left an indelible mark on Alexander's life. He avoided love, friendships, and meaningful connections, opting instead to immerse himself in work. He built a flawless public persona, a cold, unyielding, and distant CEO. Under this guise, he operated covertly, taking on the role of an unassuming middle manager within the company. Few suspected that the unremarkable Alexander Hayes they saw daily was in fact the powerful figure overseeing everything. To Alexander, trust was a luxury, and intimacy carried the ever-present risk of betrayal. That night, after a tense meeting about expansion strategies, Alexander drove home. Snow blanketed the streets, and the dim streetlights made the cold seem even more piercing. He preferred driving alone on nights like these. It was one of the rare times he could momentarily escape the pressure of work, the endless meetings, and the constant expectations. As his car glided down a quiet street, Alexander's attention was drawn to a young woman struggling with a small cart laden with grocery bags. The cart wobbled precariously on the slippery, snow-covered path, and the woman, bundled in a worn coat, desperately tried to steady it against the biting wind. Before he could fully process the scene, the cart tipped over, spilling its contents across the icy ground, and the woman slipped and fell. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Alexander hit the brakes. He rarely involved himself in the affairs of others, but something about this moment compelled him to act. Exiting his car, he felt the icy air cut through his coat as he approached the fallen woman. "Let me help," Alexander said, his voice calm yet firm. The woman looked up, her expression a mix of wariness and embarrassment. "No, thank you. I can handle it," she replied, her voice trembling from the cold. "Clearly you can't," he countered, crouching to gather the scattered bags. Reluctantly, she conceded. "Thank you," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. As Alexander helped her reload the cart, he noticed her hands reddened and chapped from the freezing weather. "Let me drive you home," he offered, ignoring her weak protests. The journey to her home was short, a modest, aging apartment in a quiet residential area. Alexander observed as she stepped out, cradling one of the bags. Through the window, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a simple room adorned with a few scattered children's toys. "Clara Sorensen," she introduced herself quickly, her hand resting on the door handle. "Thank you again. I don't know how to repay you." "There's no need," Alexander replied, nodding slightly. As he drove away, Clara Sorensen lingered in his thoughts. A single mother trying to carve out a life with so little. Her existence was a stark contrast to his. Simple, challenging, but imbued with an authenticity that resonated with him. That night, for the first time in years, Alexander felt a stirring in his soul, a longing for something his wealth and success could never provide. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today, we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. Chapter 1. Reunited. The morning sunlight filtered through the expansive glass windows of Lumos Tech's headquarters, illuminating every corner of the meticulously designed office space. Alexander Hayes stepped out of the elevator on the 38th floor, where he routinely began his day under the guise of a normal manager. No one among the employees knew that the quiet man in a modest suit was actually the CEO of the entire corporation. That morning, as usual, Alexander walked past the hallway near the main conference room, but this time, his gaze stopped at a familiar figure. Clara Sorensen, the woman he had helped the previous evening, was carefully cleaning the tables and chairs in the meeting room. She wore the dark blue uniform of the cleaning crew, her hair tied neatly back, though her face carried an air of exhaustion. Clara didn't notice Alexander as he passed. She was focused on her work, moving with precision and care. Every wipe of the cloth was deliberate, neither rushed nor haphazard. Alexander paused at the corner of the hallway, observing her quietly. He didn't know why he was drawn to her, but there was something about her patience and dedication that made him linger. When Clara turned and caught Alexander's gaze, she startled briefly before quickly nodding politely. Alexander returned the gesture with a slight nod, then continued on his way. In the days that followed, Clara frequently appeared on the 38th floor, assigned to maintain its cleanliness. Each time Alexander passed her, he made a conscious effort to engage in small talk. "Good morning," he greeted her one day as they crossed paths in the hallway. Clara looked up, slightly surprised at the friendliness of this manager. "Good morning. I hope I'm not disturbing your work." "Not at all," Alexander replied, his tone calm but warm. "You're very thorough in what you do." Clara gave a small smile but didn't say much else. Alexander noticed that she wasn't accustomed to receiving compliments, but neither did she seem overly cautious or distant. Gradually through these brief exchanges, Alexander learned more about Clara. She was a single mother working part-time to support her 3-year-old son, Elias. Her job at Lumos Tech was her primary source of income, and she made every effort to complete her task with perfection. Alexander found himself increasingly drawn to the way Clara navigated her life. Despite her struggles, she never complained or sought sympathy. Instead, she maintained a calm demeanor and carried herself with a quiet dignity that he deeply admired. One afternoon, while Alexander was working in his assumed managerial office, raised voices echoed from the hallway. He left his desk to investigate and saw Clara being berated by Sophie Larson, the administrative department head. "Can't you clean more thoroughly?" Sophie snapped, her tone sharp with irritation. "I just saw dust on the conference table." Clara stood still, her head slightly bowed, but her gaze unflinching. "I cleaned the table thoroughly before you entered. The dust might have settled from the documents you brought in." Clara's calm response only seemed to inflame Sophie further. "Don't argue with me. I'll report this to your supervisor. Your job is to clean, so do it properly." Alexander felt a surge of anger rise within him as he listened to Sophie's unjust tirade. Clara was simply doing her job, and she didn't deserve this treatment. However, Alexander knew that stepping in as a regular manager might complicate matters further. After Sophie stormed off, Alexander approached Clara. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low with concern. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm fine. I'm used to it. Thank you for asking." Alexander didn't press further, but his resolve to address the situation silently hardened. That evening, using his authority as CEO, he sent a directive to the administrative department emphasizing the importance of respecting all employees, regardless of their roles. He also instructed the cleaning team supervisor to investigate and address Sophie's habitual, unfounded complaints. The next day, Sophie received a formal email from senior management, warning her to adjust her behavior. No one suspected that Alexander was behind it all. Over the following days, Clara noticed the changes. Sophie's reprimands ceased, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Clara had no idea what had happened, but felt an unspoken sense of protection from somewhere within the company. During another encounter in the hallway, Clara was the one to speak first. "Thank you for checking in the other day. It meant a lot to me." Alexander nodded, maintaining his calm exterior. "It's important to me that everyone here is treated fairly." His response made Clara feel a warmth she hadn't expected. Though she couldn't pinpoint it, she sensed that there was more to this manager than met the eye. From that point on, Clara no longer felt alone at work. Every time she saw Alexander, she felt a quiet reassurance. And for Alexander, these moments of connection with Clara brought him a rare sense of joy, a reminder of the simple human interactions he had been missing amidst the cold walls of the empire he had spent his life building. Chapter 2. Reminiscence and Bonding. Since their first encounter at Lumos Tech, a unique connection had gradually formed between Alexander and Clara. Although their conversations began with simple questions, they quickly grew deeper as both found mutual understanding in each other's stories. One afternoon, after Clara finished her shift on the 38th floor, Alexander happened to run into her near the break area. He offered her a warm cup of coffee, and they sat together in a quiet corner of the room. "You mentioned you liked interior design," Alexander began, his eyes intently watching her. "Why did you stop pursuing it?" Clara gave a faint, bittersweet smile, gently turning the paper cup in her hands. "I studied it at university, but I had to drop out when I found out I was pregnant with Elias. My family didn't support me. They even disowned me. Since that day, Elias has been my whole world. I do everything I can to give him a stable life." Alexander was silent, feeling the pain hidden in Clara's words. "That's a huge sacrifice," he said quietly. "It's not a sacrifice," Clara replied, her eyes lighting up as she spoke about her son. "Elias is the reason I keep going, but sometimes I wonder if I could ever go back and finish that dream, if it's even possible." Alexander felt his heart sink. In Clara's eyes, he saw regret, but he also saw the resilience that helped her endure. He felt a profound sense of kinship. Memories of losing his parents in the car accident and being thrust into the responsibility of managing Lumos Tech at just 22 flooded back. Those were lonely and difficult years, where he had to learn how to run the company while facing skepticism about his abilities. "I know what that feels like," Alexander finally said after a moment of silence. "Loss and responsibility. They can make you feel very alone." Clara looked at him in surprise but didn't press further. Alexander quickly changed the subject, unwilling to reveal too much about himself. After that conversation, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had shared. He realized he wanted to help her, but didn't want her to know his true role at the company. He started with small gestures. Through an anonymous charity fund that Lumos Tech had established years ago, Alexander arranged for Elias to receive a scholarship at a high-quality preschool. Clara was initially surprised and hesitant when she received the notification, but upon learning the scholarship came from an unidentified donor, she decided to accept it for Elias's benefit. Another time, Alexander discovered that Clara often spent her evenings watching online tutorials about interior design. Recognizing that her passions still burned brightly, he secretly funded her enrollment in an online course offered by a prestigious academy. "Maybe someone out there truly believes I can do it," Clara told Alexander during one of their conversations. "I still don't know who the donor is, but I'm grateful to them." Alexander only smiled, saying nothing. He felt a quiet joy seeing Clara slowly rediscover hope in her life. One late evening, Alexander encountered Clara in the building's lobby as she finished her shift. The Oslo sky was dark, with light snow falling, covering the city in a pristine white blanket. "Clara, do you have a moment? There's a place I'd like to take you," Alexander asked, his voice gentle. Clara hesitated but eventually agreed. They walked through quiet streets to a small park in the city center. Alexander led her to a bench near a frozen pond, where the light from street lamps reflected on the icy surface, creating shimmering rays. "I come here whenever I need to think," Alexander said, sitting beside Clara. "It reminds me that no matter how busy life gets, we need to pause and reflect." Clara sat in silence, soaking in the peace of the moment. "Thank you, Alexander. I don't think I've felt this calm in a long time," she admitted. "You deserve moments like this, Clara," Alexander replied, his gaze soft. "You've done so much for Elias, but you shouldn't forget to care for yourself too." In that moment, their connection didn't need words. Alexander realized that Clara wasn't just helping him understand the importance of empathy, she was also teaching him the value of genuine relationships. Clara, though she didn't say it, also felt that Alexander was unlike anyone she had ever met. He didn't just listen to her story, he silently created opportunities for her to thrive. Even though she didn't yet know the full truth about him, Clara gradually trusted that Alexander was someone she could rely on. And so, amidst Oslo's cold winter, two lonely souls began to find warmth in each other, bit by bit, through conversations, understanding, and quiet, meaningful actions. Chapter 3. The Truth Revealed. Sophie Anker, Lumos Tech's meticulous and uncompromising HR director, prided herself on safeguarding the company's reputation. Over the past few weeks, she had noticed Alexander Hayes, usually reserved and distant, frequently appearing near Clara Sorensen's workstation, a new member of the cleaning staff. This unusual interest unsettled Sophie, raising suspicions about the nature of their interactions. One morning during a leadership meeting, Sophie raised the issue. "There's something we need to address," Sophie began, her sharp gaze fixed on Alexander. "Certain employees have reported unusual favoritism you've shown toward a junior staff member." Alexander remained calm, his expression unreadable. "You're speculating, Sophie. I observe all employees, not just Clara." Sophie wasn't convinced. "But it appears she's receiving more attention than others. To ensure transparency and fairness, I propose a thorough background check on Clara." Though he maintained his composure, Alexander felt a surge of anger. He knew Sophie's doubts were unfounded, but he couldn't defend Clara without risking exposure of his true identity. The following morning, Clara was summoned to HR. She was puzzled but immediately sensed a heavy atmosphere upon entering the room. Sophie sat at the head of the table, a folder of documents spread before her. "Ms. Sorensen," Sophie began coldly, "we've uncovered some discrepancies in your background. According to your records, you dropped out of university and had a child out of wedlock. Such personal circumstances could reflect poorly on the company's image." Clara paled but kept her composure. "My personal life has nothing to do with my work here. I've always fulfilled my duties to the best of my abilities." "We're not saying your work is unsatisfactory," Sophie replied, a smug smile playing on her lips. "But I need to understand why you seem to have a special relationship with Mr. Hayes." The insinuation felt like a slap in the face. Clara was stunned that her casual conversations with Alexander were being twisted into something inappropriate. Before she could respond, the door opened and Alexander entered the room. "What's going on here?" Alexander's voice was low and sharp, cutting through the tension. Sophie stood, attempting to maintain her composure. "Alexander, I'm merely addressing some concerns about this employee. It seems she might be taking advantage of your generosity." "My generosity?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Do you think I'm unaware of what I'm doing?" Sophie's confidence faltered under his intense gaze, but she pressed on. "We have to protect the company's reputation. If there's any inappropriate behavior between the two of you, it could damage Lumos Tech's standing." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Sophie. "If you're so concerned about the company, then I'll clarify everything here and now." Taking a deep breath, he turned to Clara. "I owe you an apology, Clara. I haven't been honest with you. I'm not a mid-level manager. I'm the CEO of Lumos Tech." The room fell silent. Clara felt as though the world had tilted beneath her feet. She stared at Alexander, her face a mix of shock and betrayal. "You're the CEO?" she whispered. "You've been hiding this from me all along?" Alexander nodded, his voice soft yet steady. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I've kept my identity hidden to better understand the company from the employee's perspective. Then I met you. You changed how I see the world, Clara. I wanted to help you, but I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, you wouldn't see me as just another person." Clara stepped back, tears welling in her eyes. "You think I needed your help?" "I don't need your pity or your generosity, Alexander. I've faced my struggles alone, and I will continue to do so." "Clara, please don't leave," Alexander said, his voice raw with emotion. "I never thought you needed pity. I only wanted to give you and Elias a chance for a better life." Clara shook her head, her tears spilling over. "You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I can't stay here, not when people are watching me with suspicion." Alexander stood frozen, watching as Clara left the room. His heart ached, but he knew he couldn't force her to stay. That evening, Clara packed her belongings and decided to leave Oslo with Elias. She knew she couldn't continue living under scrutiny, and her priority was protecting her son from judgmental eyes. As the city lights faded in the distance, Clara couldn't stop thinking about Alexander. Despite her pain, she believed she had made the right decision. Meanwhile, Alexander stood by the window of his penthouse, gazing at the glittering skyline of Oslo. A hollow emptiness filled his chest. Clara was gone, and he didn't know how to make things right. "Clara, will you ever forgive me?" he whispered, his voice laden with despair. Deep down, Alexander knew he couldn't give up. He had to find a way to prove to Clara that he wasn't just a CEO, but someone willing to change for her and Elias. Are you still following the story? If yes, comment, pizza. Ha ha. Chapter 4. The Final Test. After Clara left, Alexander felt empty, unable to focus on work. He knew he had been wrong to hide his identity, but losing Clara and Elias made him realize he couldn't give up. Determined to make amends, he decided to come clean, both to his company and to the public. At a company-wide meeting, Alexander stood on stage, his gaze steady. Facing hundreds of employees, he admitted to concealing his identity. He explained that he had done so not only to better understand the company, but also to witness the genuine efforts of his team without the shadow of his title. And during this journey, he said, his voice heavy with emotion, I met an extraordinary woman. She's not just a hard-working employee, but a resilient mother. Clara Sorensen reminded me that this company isn't just about profits, it's about people. I deeply regret not protecting her sooner. Alexander didn't stop at an apology. He made a decisive move. He terminated Sophie Anker for abusing her power and unjustly targeting Clara. He also announced the creation of the Light Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting single mothers like Clara, providing them with opportunities to learn and build better futures for their children. I've learned that sometimes it's not about avoiding mistakes, but about taking responsibility and making things right, Alexander concluded. In a small town not far from Oslo, Clara started a new life. She looked for work in local shops, but caring for Elias made full-time employment nearly impossible. Her savings dwindled, and she struggled to make ends meet. Each night, as Elias slept peacefully in her arms, she wondered if she had been wrong to refuse Alexander's help. Yet the sting of betrayal kept her from forgiving him. One day, Clara received a package. Inside was a folder introducing the Light Foundation and a handwritten letter from Alexander. Clara, I don't expect your forgiveness. I only want you to know that your story inspired me. I established this foundation not to atone for my mistakes, but because I believe people like you deserve better opportunities. If you ever need help, Elias will always be my priority. Alexander. Clara's heart felt heavy. Though she resisted accepting help, she couldn't deny that Alexander was making a sincere effort to right his wrongs. One morning, Clara noticed Elias running a high fever. Initially, she thought it was a minor cold, but his condition worsened rapidly. Panicked, she rushed him to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed Elias with severe pneumonia and said he required immediate treatment. Clara sat by his bedside, clutching his tiny hand as he labored to breathe through the tubes. She felt helpless and desperate. Amid the chaos, Alexander appeared unexpectedly. His face was etched with worry as he entered the room, accompanied by a leading specialist he had brought in. Alexander? Clara gasped, unable to hide her surprise. How did you know? Miss Martinez called me, Alexander replied, his voice calm yet gentle. I couldn't stand by while Elias needed help. Clara was speechless, watching as Alexander spoke with the doctors, ensuring Elias received the best care. Throughout the night, Alexander stayed at the hospital. He sat in the waiting area, his eyes constantly fixed on the room where Elias lay. As Elias began to recover, Clara couldn't ignore Alexander's unwavering dedication. Every time he softly asked about Elias or brought small items to comfort the boy, she felt the sincerity behind his actions. One evening, after Elias had fallen asleep, Clara stepped into the hallway where Alexander sat. Why are you doing all this? She asked, her voice a mix of skepticism and emotion. Alexander looked up, his eyes filled with regret and determination. Because I love you and Elias, Clara. I know I made mistakes, but I can't give up. I just want to make sure you both are safe. Clara felt a wave of indescribable emotion. While Alexander had erred, his actions consistently proved his genuine care for her and Elias. His sincerity, though imperfect, began to change how she saw him. When Elias was discharged from the hospital, Clara decided not to push Alexander away any longer. Despite the lingering hurt, she understood that love and kindness didn't need to be flawless to be meaningful. Clara agreed to give things another chance. not just for Alexander, but for Elias, who deserved a complete and loving family. On the ride home, as Alexander helped Clara secure Elias in the car, she looked at him and said, "I'm not ready to forgive you completely, but I'm willing to try again. For Elias." Alexander smiled, hope shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Clara. I promise I won't let you down." Beneath Oslo's starlit sky, they began to rewrite their story. No more secrets, no more walls between them, only sincerity and hope for a brighter future. Chapter 5. A Happy Ending. After Elias fully recovered, Clara decided to pursue her dream of becoming an interior designer once more. She stood at the doors of Lumos Tech again, but this time not as a cleaning staff member, but as the interior designer she had always dreamed of being. Alexander had personally arranged the position for her, though he ensured there was no pressure and left the decision entirely up to her. On her first day back, Clara noticed the change. Her colleagues greeted her warmly, and there were no longer prying eyes or whispers. Her office was near the creative department, featuring large windows overlooking the Oslo skyline. Clara began her work by planning the redesign of the company's workspace, aiming to create a more comfortable and inspiring environment for the employees. Although Alexander maintained a professional distance, he couldn't hide his pride as he watched Clara at work. He would often pause outside her office, observing her focus on her drawings, a slight smile on her lips whenever a new idea struck her. "She's truly an artist," he thought quietly. Alexander understood that Clara still needed time to heal from the emotional wounds of the past. He didn't rush her into a relationship, but chose instead to support her from afar. During his business trips, he would bring back small gifts for Elias, children's books, building toys, always thoughtfully chosen based on the boy's interests. Clara, too, began to notice Alexander's patience and sincerity in every action. Gradually, they shared more meaningful moments, weekend afternoons at the park with Elias, times when Alexander helped Clara pick colors and ideas for her design projects. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in Clara's home, with Elias soundly asleep on the couch, Clara suddenly spoke. "You've changed a lot, Alexander," she said. "I just want to prove that I can do things right, this time for you and Elias," he replied, his eyes filled with genuine honesty. Clara smiled softly. "Maybe I need to learn to trust again, too." A few months later, the Light Foundation officially launched. The event took place in Lumos Tech's Grand Hall, attended by employees, partners, and supporters. Clara, in her role as the foundation's design consultant, stood on stage to present its first projects: centers supporting single mothers, scholarships for children, and vocational training programs. From the audience, Alexander watched Clara with admiration. He saw a woman who had not only overcome her struggles, but was also inspiring others to do the same. When the ceremony ended, Alexander stepped onto the stage. With all eyes on him, he took the microphone. "Clara," he began, his voice brimming with emotion, "you've taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's action, the effort to become a better person. I know I'm not perfect, but I promise to do everything I can to bring happiness to you and Elias." Then Alexander knelt down, pulling out a small box that held a simple yet elegant ring. "Clara Sørensen, will you marry me?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Clara. Elias, standing beside his mother, tugged at her hand and whispered, "Mama, I like Mr. Alexander." Clara smiled through her tears, looking at Alexander, and nodded gently. "Yes, I will." The hall erupted into applause. Alexander embraced Clara and Elias, feeling true happiness for the first time. After their wedding, Alexander decided to move to a small house in the Oslo suburbs, a peaceful retreat perfect for raising Elias. The house had a large garden where Elias could play and Clara could grow flowers. Alexander scaled back his workload, dedicating more time to his family. Together, he and Clara cared for Elias, taking him to school, attending parent-teacher meetings, and participating in school events. Clara continued to grow her interior design career, supported by Alexander every step of the way. In the evenings, as the sunset bathed their home in golden light, the family would gather around the dinner table, sharing stories from their day. In those moments, Alexander realized that true success wasn't measured by bank accounts or accolades, but by the simple joy of being with the people he loved. The lives of Alexander, Clara, and Elias became a testament to the power of trust, forgiveness, and genuine love. They overcame pain, misunderstandings, and challenges to build a happy family together. Under Oslo's radiant glow, their story concluded not with perfection, but with authenticity and simplicity. A reminder that sometimes the most important things in life aren't what we achieve, but the values we create with the ones we love. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Your support is the motivation for us to continue bringing more great stories. In the glamorous city of Paris, where streetlights blend with the grandeur of skyscrapers, Lucas Hart was a name known to all. He was a top interior designer, renowned for his creative works and meticulous attention to detail. The spaces Lucas created were not just beautiful, they told intricate stories about the lifestyles of the elite. Yet behind that fame lay an emptiness Lucas kept hidden. His luxurious apartment, perched on the top floor of a modern high-rise, featured large glass windows offering a panoramic view of glittering Paris. But for Lucas, it was not just a living space. It was a gilded cage that trapped him in solitude. Each night he stood by the window, holding a glass of wine, his empty gaze fixed on the bustling traffic below. He would ask himself, "What have I lost on this journey to success?" Lucas had everything others dreamed of: a solid career, admiration from colleagues, and a lavish lifestyle. Yet deep down, there was a void that neither material wealth nor professional triumphs could fill. Sometimes, amidst the applause and accolades, he found himself yearning for the past, when life was simpler and his heart beat faster for someone special. One late evening, after a meeting with a client, Lucas drove home through streets that seemed to sink into silence, illuminated only by the golden glow of streetlights. Soft music from the car speakers was his attempt to ward off the weariness of the day. When the traffic light turned red, he stopped, his gaze wandering aimlessly across the scene outside. Then suddenly, he froze. A woman was struggling with several large bags, her movements slow and unsteady as she tried to balance them. Lucas frowned, a strange sense of familiarity stirring within him. Suddenly, the woman clutched her stomach, as if trying to brace herself against a wave of pain. Then she collapsed. Without hesitation, Lucas opened the car door and stepped out. He hurried across the quiet street, his heart pounding. As he approached, he felt a chill run through him. Despite her frail and haggard appearance, Lucas recognized her instantly. It was Elena Morgan, his first love. "Elena!" he called out, his voice trembling with shock. Elena looked up at him, her tired eyes filled with a faint glimmer of surprise. Her lips moved as if to speak, but she lost consciousness before she could utter a word. Lucas quickly knelt down, gently supporting her fragile body. He could feel her faint breath and cold hands, as if they had endured endless days of hardship. Looking down, his eyes stopped at Elena's abdomen, clearly showing signs of pregnancy. A mix of worry and sorrow swept over Lucas. He lifted her up, feeling a weight that was more than physical. He was carrying a part of his past, heavy with unanswered questions. "We're going to the hospital right away," he said, as though making a solemn vow to himself. Under the dim golden glow of the city lights, Lucas carefully placed Elena in the car, his mind racing with a flurry of questions. He didn't know why Elena was there, why she had fallen into such a state, or why fate had brought them together at this moment. But the one thing he knew with certainty was that he could not leave her alone any longer. Thus began Lucas and Elena's journey anew, under the city streetlights, where old questions and new secrets were about to unfold. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. Chapter 1. The Reunion. In the cold stillness of a Parisian night, Lucas Hart drove hurriedly to the hospital. Elena Morgan, the woman he had once loved more than anything, lay unconscious in the back seat, her face pale and her breath shallow. Memories of her flooded his mind, making it hard for him to focus on the road ahead. When he reached the hospital, Lucas immediately called for help. Medical staff rushed Elena into the emergency room, leaving Lucas standing in the hallway, his mind swirling with worry and regret. He sank into a chair in the waiting area, his gaze fixed on the closed door of the operating room. Time seemed to slow, each second dragging on unbearably. Finally, a doctor emerged. Lucas jumped to his feet, his voice trembling. "How is she, doctor?" "She's out of danger," the doctor replied. "She's malnourished and exhausted, but the baby's unharmed. However, she'll need rest and specialized care in the coming weeks." Lucas let out a sigh of relief, but guilt weighed heavily in his chest. How had Elena, once so vibrant and full of life, ended up like this? He blamed himself for not keeping in touch after they parted ways, leaving her to bear everything alone. When Elena regained consciousness, her eyes met Lucas's. For a moment, surprise and conflicting emotions flashed across her face. She tried to sit up, but Lucas quickly stopped her. "Elena, don't push yourself. You need to rest," he said softly. "Lucas," she murmured, her voice weak but still carrying a hint of defiance. "What are you doing here?" "I found you," he replied. "You collapsed in the street. Do you think I could just walk away?" Elena turned her face toward the window, her expression guarded. "I don't need your pity." "This isn't pity," Lucas said, his frustration evident. "Elena, I just want to help. I need to know what happened." At first, Elena remained silent, as if debating whether to share the truth. Finally, she let out a sigh, her gaze softening, and began to speak. After leaving Lucas, she had tried to rebuild her life. A job at a small company had provided stability for a while, but when the company downsized, Elena was among the first to be let go. Unable to find new work, she quickly ran out of savings and could no longer afford her rent. Unwilling to return home in defeat, she chose to live in her car, clinging to the hope that things would eventually improve. But her hopes gradually faded as every opportunity seemed to slip away. She survived on meager meals and tried to hide her circumstances from her old acquaintances. When she discovered she was pregnant, she felt both joy and fear. The baby became her motivation to keep going, but it also made her life even harder. Lucas listened in silence, each word from Elena cutting deep into his heart. He felt a sense of responsibility, even though no one had asked this of him. Elena had once been his entire world, and now she was enduring all this alone. "I don't need your help, Lucas," Elena said, her eyes locking with his as if daring him to argue. "But you need a safe place," Lucas countered immediately. "You can't go back to living in your car. I won't let that happen. You need rest, and so does the baby." Elena wanted to refuse, but she knew she no longer had the strength to fight. Reluctantly, she nodded, and Lucas took her back to his apartment. Lucas's apartment, a place Elena had once imagined as cold and impersonal, was now rearranged to welcome her. He prepared a separate room for her, complete with a soft bed, warm lighting, and even a small potted plant by the window. Lucas carefully stocked the kitchen with light meals and nutritious drinks for her. Yet Elena remained distant. Each time Lucas tried to engage her in conversation, she responded with caution or silence. The pain of their past still lingered, like an invisible wall keeping them apart. One morning, as Lucas brought breakfast to Elena, he hesitated for a moment outside her door before knocking. When he entered, he found her sitting by the window, her gaze distant as she looked out at the bustling city below. "Elena," Lucas said gently, placing the tray on the table, "I know you might not be ready, but I really want to help. I don't want you to feel alone anymore." Elena turned to look at him, her expression softening slightly. "Lucas, I'm not sure we can ever go back to what we were, but I do appreciate what you're doing." Lucas nodded, sensing a flicker of hope. The path ahead was still long and fraught with challenges, but he was determined to prove that he wasn't just a successful man. He was someone who could offer safety and love to Elena and her child. There was still much left unsaid, many wounds left to heal. But in the soft morning light of Paris, a new chance seemed to be quietly unfolding, full of promise and hope. Chapter 2, Memories and Reconnection. The soft morning sunlight streamed through the windows, warming Lucas's apartment and softening its cold edges. After days of rest, Elena looked healthier, though she still carried an air of reserve. One quiet morning, as they sat at a small table with cups of tea in hand, old memories resurfaced through a simple question from Lucas. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked, his voice gentle but tinged with a hint of nervousness. Elena glanced up, her eyes meeting his. A faint smile played on her lips. How could I forget? A young man desperately trying to convince an art teacher that his sketches were truly worth something. Lucas chuckled softly, a laugh filled with nostalgia. He remembered those days vividly when he was just beginning his journey into the world of design. He had met Elena at an art exhibition she organized for her students. To him, Elena was not only beautiful, but also brimming with passion, her eyes sparkling as she spoke about art. You were the only one who believed I could do it, Lucas said, his smile fading into a look of seriousness. If it weren't for you, I might have given up long ago. Elena lowered her gaze to the teacup in her hands. Back then, I saw someone with real ambition. I couldn't help but support you. They sat in silence for a moment, letting their shared memories rise to the surface. They had once lived in a small apartment, cramped but filled with countless memories. Lucas, then an ambitious young designer, would spend nights at his desk, tirelessly working on sketches to impress clients. Do you remember that time you worked for 48 hours straight and forgot to eat? Elena laughed, breaking the silence. I had to drag you away from your desk and force-feed you a bowl of cold noodles. Lucas joined her laughter. I remember, and I also remember you threatening to throw all my sketches in the trash if I collapsed from exhaustion. They laughed together, the familiarity of those past years briefly bridging the gap that had grown between them. Those were challenging days, but they had each other. Elena would often bring old materials from her classroom for Lucas to use in his prototypes. Evenings were spent sharing simple meals, laughing over Lucas's clumsy kitchen mishaps. They didn't have much, but it always seemed enough. But things began to change when Lucas achieved his first big success. A major client recognized his talent, and his career started to take off. The endless meetings, bigger projects, and a demanding schedule created a growing distance between him and Elena. At first I tried to understand, Elena said, her gaze distant as she recalled those days. I thought if I waited long enough, things would get better. But then, the canceled dates, the broken promises, I felt like I was becoming invisible in your life. Lucas remained silent, a heavy sense of guilt weighing on him. I was so caught up in my career that I forgot the most important thing. Elena smiled, though there was a touch of bitterness in it. Lucas, I don't blame you, but back then, I had to leave to save myself. Their conversation trailed off into silence, both of them lost in thought. But this time, Lucas wasn't going to let Elena leave. As days passed, Lucas worked to show Elena that he wasn't helping her out of a sense of duty. He began with the smallest gestures. One morning, Elena woke to find Lucas fumbling in the kitchen. Smoke rose from a pan, and he held a spoon with a tense expression. Lucas, what are you doing? Elena asked, half surprised, half amused. Breakfast, he replied, turning to her with a sheepish smile, his face smudged with flour. I'm learning to cook. You need proper meals. Elena stepped forward, gently taking the spoon from his hand. Let me help, but next time, turn on the vent before you set the kitchen on fire. They both laughed, the sound breaking down the barriers between them. Lucas also began accompanying Elena to her prenatal appointments. He sat beside her, listening carefully to the doctor's advice and taking meticulous notes. After each visit, he would stop by a store to pick up essentials for the baby. You seem more excited about preparing for the baby than I am, Elena teased one day when Lucas enthusiastically picked out a few extra blankets. I just want everything to be perfect, Lucas replied, his eyes soft with sincerity. Gradually, Elena began to sense the genuine effort in Lucas's actions. The wounds of the past, though not fully healed, started to fade under the warmth of his small but meaningful gestures. One late evening, as they sat together in the living room under the gentle glow of the lamps, Lucas broke the silence. His voice was low but filled with emotion. I've made so many mistakes in the past, he said, but now I want to make things right, not just for you, but for me. I've realized that you are the most important thing I've ever had. Elena looked at him, her eyes searching for the truth in his words. After a moment, she smiled, a soft, warm smile. Lucas, I don't know what the future holds, but maybe we can start again, one step at a time. Lucas nodded, his heart filling with hope. They didn't need to rush, and they both knew that rebuilding trust would take time and honesty. Under the quiet glow of Paris, a new chapter began for Lucas and Elena, one filled with hope, determination, and the possibility of love reborn. Chapter 3. The Truth Revealed. One quiet evening, the golden glow of the streetlights filtered through the large windows, casting a warm light over Lucas's living room. Elena sat in an armchair by the window, her gaze quietly fixed on the streets of Paris below. Her hand gently rested on her growing belly, her heart heavy with anxiety. Lucas entered from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. He set one down in front of Elena and sat across from her, his eyes filled with concern. "Elena, you seem lost in thought. Is something wrong?" Lucas asked, his voice soft but laced with worry. Elena looked up, her eyes reflecting hesitation. Many times she had tried to summon the courage to speak the truth, but each time her resolve faltered. Yet she knew she couldn't keep it to herself forever. "Lucas," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." Lucas leaned forward, his expression serious. "You can tell me anything, Elena. I'm here to listen." Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her heart pounded as she prepared to reveal the truth she had feared for so long. "Lucas, the baby, it's yours." Lucas blinked, caught completely off guard by her words. "Elena, what are you saying? Are you telling me?" Elena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, I've known for a while now, but I hid it from you because I thought you wouldn't care, or that you wouldn't want to be part of my life anymore. I thought you had left me for good." Lucas sat in silence for a moment, processing the bombshell she had just dropped. He looked at Elena, his gaze a mix of shock and emotion. "Elena, why didn't you tell me sooner? I had a right to know. We should have faced this together." Elena lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want to be a burden to you. I was afraid you would reject me, reject the baby." Lucas shook his head, his heart aching. He stood and walked toward her, kneeling down and taking her hands gently in his. "Elena, I have never rejected you. Maybe I made mistakes in the past, but now I know that you and the baby mean everything to me. I won't let you face this alone." Elena looked into his eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Lucas, I don't know what to say. I've been scared for so long, but now I believe in you." Lucas squeezed her hand softly, his gaze unwavering. "We'll raise this child together, Elena. I want to do this, not out of duty, but because I love you, and I want to make up for what I've missed." Elena smiled through her tears, warmth spreading through her heart. For the first time in years, she felt she wasn't alone. From that night on, a new connection began to form between Lucas and Elena. Without the weight of unspoken truths, they started to rebuild trust and understanding. Lucas devoted more time to caring for Elena, preparing meals, accompanying her to prenatal checkups, and planning for the baby's arrival. He even began reading books about pregnancy and newborn care, wanting to understand what Elena was going through. "You don't have to do all this," Elena said one day, watching Lucas struggle to assemble a crib. Lucas looked up, smiling. "I want to, not just for you, but for me too. I want to be a part of both your lives." Elena gazed at him, her heart softening. She knew Lucas wasn't just speaking empty words. His actions, however small, reflected a sincerity she hadn't seen before. One evening, as they sat together on the sofa, Lucas suddenly spoke up. "Elena, I want to ask you something." "What is it?" Elena turned to him, curious. "Do you think we can start over?" Lucas asked, his eyes serious. Elena sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on everything they had been through. Finally, she smiled, a gentle but firm smile. "If you're willing to try, then so am I." Lucas nodded, a quiet joy spreading through him. They didn't need to rush, and they knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But both were determined, knowing that they were no longer just two individuals. They now had a little life waiting for them to create a family together. In the gentle glow of the evening, they sat side by side, feeling that, while the past had left its scars, the future was an open page ready to be filled with a new story. Are you still following the story? If yes, comment pizza. Chapter 4. The final challenge. As the final months of Elena's pregnancy approached, she began to grow weaker. She tired easily, her steps were slow, and she often complained of backaches. Lucas paid close attention to every small change, his concern growing with each passing day, as if letting her out of his sight for even a moment might mean missing something crucial. "Elena, you should rest more," Lucas reminded her, handing her a soft pillow to make her more comfortable on the sofa. "I can't lie down all day, Lucas. I need to move around a little," Elena replied, but her tone softened as she accepted a fresh glass of juice he had prepared for her. The two of them laughed together and the warmth between them grew steadily. Lucas displayed a patience and care that Elena had never seen before. Despite this, she still harbored a small trace of doubt, as if she was afraid to believe that things were truly changing for the better. A sudden turn of events. One night, while Lucas was in his study tweaking a design for a client, he heard Elena's faint voice calling from her room. "Lucas!" The sound made him jump out of his chair immediately. He rushed to her room and found her sitting on the bed, her face contorted in pain. "Are you okay? What's happening?" Lucas asked, his voice filled with worry. I think it's happening," Elena said, clutching her belly, her breathing rapid and uneven. Lucas froze for a moment as panic surged through him. He wasn't the kind of man to lose his composure easily, but this moment left him feeling utterly helpless. "Don't worry, I'm taking you to the hospital right now," he exclaimed. He quickly helped her into a coat, grabbed the hospital bag they had prepared weeks ago, and guided her to the car. During the drive, Lucas tried to maintain his calm, but his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and his eyes darted frequently toward Elena. "Are you okay? Just a little longer. We're almost there," he reassured her, his voice trembling. The long wait. At the hospital, nurses and doctors swiftly wheeled Elena into the delivery room. Lucas was left outside, his heart pounding with anxiety. He paced the waiting area incessantly, his eyes glued to the operating room doors. The hours stretched unbearably. Lucas couldn't stop worrying about whether Elena and the baby would be okay. Memories of their shared past played in his mind, joyful moments from their youth, years of separation, and the challenging journey that had brought them here. "Please, just let them be safe," he whispered, a silent prayer escaping his lips. Finally, the doors opened, and a doctor emerged with a gentle smile. "Both mother and baby are safe. She delivered early, but the baby is healthy." Lucas let out a deep sigh of relief, as though a colossal weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Can I see them?" he asked, his voice shaking with emotion. "We're moving her to a recovery room. You can go in shortly," the doctor replied. Meeting Emma. When Lucas entered the room, he found Elena lying on the bed, exhausted but smiling softly. In her arms was a tiny baby girl, her face flushed and her eyes closed peacefully. "Elena," Lucas whispered as he approached her. She looked up at him, her voice weak but warm. "Lucas, this is Emma." Lucas leaned down to gaze at the baby in Elena's arms. His heart melted as he saw Emma for the first time. The tiny child stirred something profound within him, a newfound sense of responsibility and love. "She's absolutely perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did amazing, Elena." Elena smiled, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she felt a complete sense of safety and trust in Lucas, caring for Elena and Emma. In the days that followed, Lucas devoted himself entirely to caring for Elena and Emma. He woke up in the middle of the night to check on Emma, helped Elena with diaper changes, and took care of even the smallest tasks without complaint. One evening, Elena caught Lucas sitting by Emma's crib, softly singing a lullaby. She stood in the doorway, silently watching, her heart swelling with warmth. "You've changed so much," she said when Lucas turned and saw her there. Lucas smiled and walked toward her. "I know I made mistakes in the past, but now I want to make things right. Not just for you or Emma, but for myself too. I want to be someone both of you can rely on." Elena looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Lucas, I believe in you. I can see that you're truly trying." Planning for the future. As time passed, Elena began to open her heart more. They shared the responsibilities of caring for Emma and spent quiet moments discussing their hopes and plans for the future. One evening, as they sat on the couch while Emma slept peacefully in her crib, Lucas reached for Elena's hand. I know the past hasn't been easy for us, he said, but I want us to look forward, to build a life together, a family we can both be proud of. Elena smiled, her heart full of gratitude and hope. Lucas, we've come so far. I think we can do it. Together. They sat there in the gentle glow of the room, knowing that the road ahead might still hold challenges, but feeling confident that they could face them as a family. Chapter 5. A Happy Ending. One quiet afternoon as Emma napped, Lucas and Elena sat together on the sofa, sunlight streaming gently through the window. Lucas took Elena's hand in his gaze steady and filled with determination. Elena, I can't change the past, but I want us to have a better future. I want us to build a real family together, he said. Elena nodded, her eyes reflecting understanding and trust. Lucas, I've seen how hard you've worked every day. I know we still have challenges ahead, but I believe we can overcome them together. Both of them turned their gaze to Emma's crib, where she slept peacefully. She was not just a child, but a symbol of hope, forgiveness, and love. In that moment, Lucas and Elena knew they were ready to start a new chapter, one built on love and commitment, a solid foundation for their small family. 2 years after Emma's birth, life for Lucas and Elena had completely transformed. They moved from a high-rise apartment to a cozy house in the suburbs of Paris, complete with a lush green garden. Though the house wasn't as luxurious as their previous apartment, it was brimming with life, filled with Emma's laughter and cherished family moments. Lucas had learned to balance his career with family life. He often declined unnecessary meetings to spend more time with Elena and Emma. Each morning he prepared a simple breakfast, watching Elena smile and Emma play eagerly with her toys in the dining room. These moments were more precious to Lucas than anything else. With Lucas's support, Elena rekindled her passion for teaching. She opened a small art class at home where neighborhood children could freely explore their creativity. The walls of their house were adorned with her students' artwork, creating a vibrant and inspiring space. One summer day, Lucas suggested a family picnic by the Seine. Elena happily prepared the picnic basket, while Emma, now a lively 2-year-old, ran around excitedly in her pretty little dress, clutching a teddy bear. At the riverside, they picked a quiet spot under a large tree. Lucas spread a blanket on the grass, Elena arranged the food, and Emma played with wildflowers nearby. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of summer through the air. After their meal, Lucas suddenly stood, looking at Elena with a deep and thoughtful expression. He walked toward her, taking her hand. Elena, there's something I've wanted to do for a long time, he said, his voice warm but tinged with nervousness. Elena looked at him in surprise. What is it, Lucas? Lucas knelt down and pulled a small box from his pocket. When he opened it, a sparkling ring gleamed in the golden sunlight. I've made many mistakes in the past, but you gave me a chance to make things right. You and Emma mean everything to me. I can't imagine my life without you. Elena Morgan, will you marry me? Elena was speechless. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she nodded, overcome with emotion. Yes, Lucas, I will. Emma, not understanding what was happening, clapped her hands and giggled, making both of them laugh through their tears. Lucas rose, gently slipping the ring onto Elena's finger. He pulled her into his arms while Emma ran circles around them, her laughter echoing across the serene riverside. Lucas and Elena's wedding was a simple but heartfelt celebration. They invited only their closest friends and family, hosting the ceremony in the garden of their home. Elena wore a modest white dress, holding Lucas's hand as they exchanged vows. Emma, dressed in a sweet floral dress, was the adorable flower girl who made everyone smile with her charm. Their life after marriage was filled with simple yet priceless moments. Lucas spent evenings teaching Emma how to draw or reading her bedtime stories. When not busy with her art classes, Elena often cooked family meals, and the three of them would sit together, sharing laughter at the dining table. A year after their wedding, they welcomed another addition to their family, a healthy baby boy they named Leo. Emma, now an enthusiastic older sister, eagerly helped her mother care for her baby brother, bringing even more joy and love to their home. One weekend afternoon, the family gathered in their garden. Lucas and Elena sat on the bench, watching Emma and Leo play on the grass. A soft breeze carried the scent of freshly planted flowers Elena had tended to earlier. Lucas took Elena's hand, his gaze as tender as it had been the day they first met. "Thank you for giving me another chance," he said. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling softly. "Thank you for proving that love can overcome any challenge." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was the trials, mistakes, and heartfelt efforts to mend what was broken that made their life so meaningful. In the golden hues of the evening sun, their little family was a testament to true love, a love not built on perfection, but on forgiveness, commitment, and the strength to weather life's storms together. And so, under the fading sunlight, Lucas, Elena, Emma, and Leo came together as the perfect pieces of a beautiful family puzzle, crafting a life filled with love, laughter, and hope. The story of Lucas and Elena delivers a profound lesson about love, forgiveness, and responsibility. It reminds us that no one is perfect, but sincerity, the effort to change, and unwavering commitment can heal any wound. Love is not just a feeling, but an action, putting others before oneself, overcoming past mistakes, and building a future together. Above all, it shows that family is where we find peace, no matter how difficult the past may have been. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Your support is the motivation for us to continue bringing more great stories